Hey, good morning. Hang on a second. I'm my own disc jockey now, so I got to turn the music down on my own here. Welcome to another beautiful morning up north. It's a Thursday morning. It's January 15th, 2026, if I did all that right. I'm Pat Kreitlow. Thanks for being here. Secretary of State Sarah Godlewski is going to join us in just a sec, along with Shawn Phetteplace from Main Street Alliance, Main Street Action. Couple of big events that they're working on. There is a day of action planned in the state capitol, in Madison, and other spots coming up next week that Shawn's going to talk about, along with Sarah Godlewski. And then Shawn's also going to talk about the first gubernatorial forum that's coming up among the 7 leading Democratic candidates for governor. That also will be taking place next week. I've got a lot of new things on the Do Something calendar of events as well. And let's see, I should let you know that this time tomorrow, we'll be talking to Dr. Kristen Lyerly, as we often do on Fridays. And then next Monday, which is a holiday for some of you, for Martin Luther King Jr. Day, Monday we will be talking to Lieutenant Governor Sara Rodriguez. And so, yeah, stick around for that. And then more guests coming up next week as well. Let's see. I really want to urge you to go online. I should have had this picture ready to pop up online, but I didn't. Somebody over at the State Senate Democratic Committee has earned an extra cookie. Maybe you have seen the post that the state Republican Party put up, which tried to take a shot at Francesca Hong and Mandela Barnes, except it wasn't Mandela Barnes in the photo. It was David Crowley, the Milwaukee County executive, who's also a candidate for governor. Republicans later put out a corrected post. Now, depending on your point of view, the original graphic was a truly dumb mistake, borderline racist, or maybe intentional and full speed racist. I don't know. I haven't seen an apology or an explanation. But I bring it up because Senate Democrats understood the assignment, and they wanted to call attention to 2 of their Republican targets for next November: Howard Markline, the co-chair of the Joint Finance Committee, and Van Wanggaard of Racine. So go online and look at the Democratic graphic in response, because you do see Van Wanggaard, but in place of Howard Markline, somebody that looks a lot like, because it's Waldorf, the Muppet from the Muppet Show. The similarity is a little striking. There is not a ton of bipartisanship in the state capitol, but I can guarantee you there was bipartisan chuckling when that came out, and I'm sure that more than a couple of Republican staffers said under their breath, well played. All right, let's get to our guests here. Secretary of State Sarah Godlewski is joining us, as is Shawn Phetteplace from Main Street Alliance and Main Street Action, and it's going to be great to have them both here to talk about events coming up next week. Shawn and Secretary Godlewski, how are you?
I'm
good.
great.
How you doing?
It's good to be here.
Yes, nice to see you here. Sarah Godlewski, a candidate for lieutenant governor as well, but is joining Shawn to talk a bit about the day of action that's coming up at the Capitol. Now, for folks that weren't regular listeners to the radio show, or who haven't seen the many articles we've done about Main Street Alliance over the years, Shawn, let's always start with the nice overview. I always describe it as the small business alternative to WMC, but I'm sure there's a more official explanation than that when you talk about Main Street Alliance and Main Street Action, Shawn.
Yeah, we're an organization made up of small business owners who care about their neighbors, care about their communities, and we're pretty 70% women, much more diverse chamber than a lot of them. And I just have to say, I kind of chuckled when I passed WMC the other day, because there was a big for sale sign outside, which I think was very apropos with what they do for our state. And we have about 2,000 members in Wisconsin. We've been growing here for about the last 5 years, and excited to be on here with Secretary of State Godlewski, who's been a really good friend to the organization for quite a while.
Well, and who also understands the importance that Main Street businesses play, which is not to say there isn't a role for our large industries. Of course there is, but it's a very diverse business sector we've got out there, Sarah, and from your time in the Chippewa Valley how important it is that the voices of small businesses are also heard, the small entrepreneurs and the people who are really closer to their workers in many instances compared to the big boys.
Well, and that's why I really appreciate the work of Main Street Alliance, is because our state runs on Main Street, not on Wall Street. But yet, who's fighting for our small businesses to make sure that they have access to healthcare, or they have access to good schools, or access to the employees that they need? And that's the work that Main Street Alliance is doing day in and day out, because, Wall Street's got these billionaire lobbyists. But what I think is so important about Main Street is that they are people powered by the hardworking small business owners across this state. And we know how important they are.
Absolutely. So, Shawn, tell us about the day of action that's going to be taking place next week. With last note I saw here from you was more than 100 small business owners and allies from across Wisconsin who are gathering. Is it starting first at Garver Feed Mill?
Yeah, so Garver Feed Mill is a great MSA member business, and it's actually funny. It's an incubator in some ways because they have an Ian's Pizza there. They have Ledger Coffee, Sitka Salmon's there, and they also host the farmers market in the wintertime. So they're a great. It just seems appropriate to do it there.
So it'll start there Tuesday. I forgot to give the day there. Tuesday at 10 a.m. next week, January 20th, right?
That's right.
Okay.
So we're meeting there, doing a prep session, getting ready. We're going to be advocating for things like postpartum Medicaid extension, which I'll just say one man is in the way of, which is Speaker Robin Voss. So we're trying to get that done. Badger care expansion with the public option, paid family medical leave. We worked really hard on passage of paid leave in Minnesota, and we're actively working on implementation. We should join them in Illinois and a bunch of the other states who've done it recently. And working on supporting bills that'll help make it easier for small businesses to start and grow. And so we're going to be there from 10 to 12 to get ready. We have a few speakers. Secretary Sarah Godlewski, I'm happy to say, is our special guest. And then people will be getting some pizza and then heading up to the Capitol to meet with their lawmakers.
And engage in what I like to call small L lobbying, Sarah, because you and I both know all kinds of full-time lobbyists who work the halls of the Capitol. But it's when, those everyday folks come down and they're lobbyists for a day that, frankly, a lot of legislators from both parties, it's kind of refreshing. And I feel like they really get to hear, kind of the boots on the ground view of some of these important issues.
Well, I just think about talking to a small business owner myself recently. They were a child care provider, and some of the issues that they've been facing with cuts that have been happening to our child care community. They serve a lot of small business owners, but this child care provider herself, she's like, look, I'm going to have to close my doors because I cannot keep operating in a deficit. And she's like, I want to make smart business choices, but at the same time, I can't outprice my families because I need to be affordable to them. And oh, by the way, I need to pay my workers a fair wage. And I've recently lost employees to a gas station because they're willing to pay more and provide benefits. And it's like, help me make sense of this. I mean, these are childcare providers who are providing, I would say, an essential service, because if we don't have a place to take our kids, how are you going to be able to work? And yet we are, treating them like it's like some sort of babysitting job when we know that couldn't be further from the truth.
Well, you understand, and Shawn, you mentioned this in the material for the event as well, that this Main Street Cares Day of Action revolves around, as you said, Shawn, expanding postpartum Medicaid coverage for new moms, but guaranteed paid family and medical leave, fully funded child care, investments in education, and other investments that, can make it easier to run a small business. But Sarah, getting to those first couple of items, it's the whole notion of the care economy that we're talking about here. It feels like a lot of politicians still don't understand that there is a real care economy that is needed at all ends of the age spectrum for our families.
Well, I think about why I love Wisconsin, Pat, and I think Wisconsin is the best place to live, work, and raise a family. But it's because we have to provide ways in which they do that. I mean, and I'm thinking about things just recently, like healthcare is constantly something I'm getting phone calls about, emails, talking to people about, because things like they're seeing in Washington with the big BS bill that's now kicking Wisconsinites off of their healthcare. And so where are they going to go? Well, the state of Wisconsin has to step up and do that. And I think one of the things that is one of the most easy ways is expanding Badger Care, expanding Medicare to Medicaid to a lot more people. And what's interesting about all of this is we're already paying into the federal system to do that. And so why do we not just say, okay, let's bring those tax dollars that we're already paying back to our state to give healthcare access to more people? I mean, I don't understand. If it's something that we're already paying for federally and we know it's something that we need, why would we not provide that for our people here in Wisconsin? And these small business owners see that day in and day out as they're, thinking through ways to get healthcare, because healthcare costs are becoming so astronomical and hard to compete with. And so this is, again, something that Main Street Alliance is fighting for, and it's a very common sense solution.
Secretary of State Sarah Godlewski is here. Now, my own 2 cents, and it's my opinion alone, but part of the reason the whole notion of a care economy doesn't get more support in some of our political bodies is that there are too many people in those political bodies that think the care economy is more or less manufactured. And if certain people would just stay home, that wouldn't be a problem, which is as outdated as it is sexist and a whole lot of other isms that are out there as well. Shawn, in terms of the expansion of Medicaid coverage for working families, there's a new story out. Eric Gunn over at Wisconsin Examiner has it. The enrollment drop in the Affordable Care Act health plans in Wisconsin and across the nation, because again, you don't have those enhanced tax credits. Republicans allowed them to expire, ignored pleas to keep them in place. U.S. Senate Republicans just yesterday killed the potential for a deal to get done to resurrect those tax credits. And as a result, according to Eric Gunn's reporting on the latest healthcare.gov report, we're looking at somewhere between 25 and 30,000 people in Wisconsin who have not yet signed up for Affordable Care Act health insurance coverage compared to last year. That's going to have a real impact on the small businesses of Wisconsin and the labor shortage that is going on in those businesses, right?
Yes, and I'll just say our organization worked very hard to pressure 4 members of the House of Representatives to support the Affordable Care Act subsidy extension. You have 2 in Iowa, 1 in Virginia, and our lovely Congressman Derek Van Orden in Western Wisconsin. And what I would say is that there's something called a free vote, which is that when you think something's going to pass anyway, you're allowed to do so to save your own butt. And that's what he did when he voted for the ACA subsidy extension. If you look at back his remarks about the ACA leading up to that vote, if you look at all the discourse about this, it's very clear that he voted that way to save his own job and not because he was looking out for the folks in his district. Because if he was doing so, he wouldn't have voted for those cuts in the first place. And so I just think it's really important for people to call him out on that, which we have been doing. And there are considerable increases. There was actually I had to call the Commissioner of Insurance to make sure this is correct when there was estimates that were coming out about how much premiums were going to go up. And there was an estimate that in Eau Claire, which I know, Sarah, you're from, a couple making $80,000 a year combined at the age of 60 would see their premiums go up by $32,000 a year. I called the government office just to be like, I know it's high. And I double checked the numbers and that was correct. And so there are not only people being impacted really negatively by this in general, but there's some people who are being absolutely devastated by these cuts that Derek Van Orden voted for.
Yeah, and we also explained the notion of a free pass in last Sunday's newsletter. Folks can sign up for that over at upnorthnewswi.com. Sarah, the upshot of it is if this deal is in fact dead in the U.S. Senate, and again, you have perhaps tens of thousands of people in Wisconsin not signing up for health insurance coverage this year, that impact is not only felt at home, but in small businesses, frankly, in some of the larger businesses. Not every larger business provides, employer health care as well. So we're really going to start to see the real life ramifications of this move by Republicans.
Well, and that's what I think is so infuriating about all of this is we can be proactive and address it now instead of when people don't have access to healthcare, they're going to have to go to the emergency room, and we can be better at taking care of that. I mean, I think about the days even before we had access to Obamacare. And I remember at the time I did not have insurance, and I made a sign that said my car had better insurance than I did, because I had to get insurance for my car, but the government didn't think I was important enough to get my own coverage for my own health so I could be able to work and operate appropriately. And that's where we're going back to. And so to me, this is a simple access to healthcare issue. And when we expand Badger Care and we make healthcare more affordable, it's a win-win for everybody. And that's simply just not what the Republicans in our state legislature are fighting for.
Shawn, any other notes about the day of action next week with Secretary of State Sarah Godlewski joining as well? And then we'll pivot to the gubernatorial forum that you're working on as well. But what else could folks need to know if they, is it too late to sign up? Are there other ways they can support this day of action?
So it's absolutely not too late. Folks can go to mainstreetalliance.org. Just scroll down slightly and you'll see our events page, and you'll see that as the next event happening. So you can sign up there. You don't have to be an expert. The main thing is to come and tell your story and talk to your lawmakers about what matters to you. The legislature is going to be in session, so they are going to be there. And whether it's staff or themselves, it's important to make sure that they know what you care about and what you want. After having our gerrymander maps struck down, a lot of these folks, I mean, there are many members of the legislature who won by 600 votes, 400 votes, 300 votes, and they better listen to their constituents. Otherwise, they're going to be out of a job. And so, again, you don't have to be an expert. We're going to prep people ahead of time. We're going to pair you up with other folks from the district. So come one, come all, whether you're a veteran at this or a newbie, we'd be happy to have you there.
All right, mainstreetalliance.org again. And Sarah, speaking of the legislature being in session next week and again this week, I just want to get your quick thoughts with Wisconsin Eye down because, again, it's lacking the financial support that I think state government should be providing it. But I'm sure you've seen the news stories that Republicans are now enforcing a no video, no live streaming rule on sessions and committee hearings and things like that. And it seems to be not the best time for a group in charge of the legislature to want to say to its constituents, we don't want you to see what we're doing.
Well, I think the irony of all of this is you take away the transparency that they apparently care about, and all of a sudden they have more hearings and more meetings in basically 2 weeks than they've had in an entire 2 years. So help me make sense of that. So you close the door to the public, and then all of a sudden you can have all of these hearings. But further, if people from Wisconsin want to drive down and help be the transparent guardians for our state and provide the information by using their phone, they're now all of a sudden not allowed. And so to me, this is exactly almost like foreshadowing of what continued Republican control or further Republican control would look like. Is they don't want you to know what they're actually trying to fight for, which is further from affordability or access to health care or public education or childcare or you name it.
And finally, Secretary of State Sarah Godlewski is also a candidate for lieutenant governor. I'm sure we'll get into that more as 2026 rolls on, but I imagine that, the governor's race gets a lot of attention. We're going to talk to Shawn about the panel in just a sec here, but I'm sure you've already been making the rounds explaining why you would like to be Wisconsin's next lieutenant governor.
Yeah, well, I will tell you, Pat, something that my parents would always say is that when I was a kid is when you see something wrong, Sarah, you got to stand up and you got to do something about it. And the issues that we were talking about today, I have been hearing as I've been traveling across the state, whether it's not being able to afford a place in which communities that people work, and yet they're seeing billionaires get tax write-offs or corporations are getting tax write-offs and our small businesses are fighting for. And so to me, these are the reasons that I'm running for office, is because I believe it's the best state to live, work, and raise a family, but we've got to actually deliver policies that do that.
Secretary of State Sarah Godlewski, candidate for lieutenant governor, and will be part of the Main Street Day of Action down in Madison next week. Sarah, always good to see you. Safe travels.
Well, thanks so much for having me. It was great to be here and hope to see you guys next week.
Absolutely. All right. Thank you, Sarah. Talk to you later. All right. Shawn, let's continue now talking about what Main Street Action is doing in terms of the gubernatorial forum. Again, you have the 7 leading Democratic candidates for governor who are going to be a part of this. I'm going to pop them up on screen here real quick, Shawn, while you tell me a bit more about what it is that you're planning next week.
Yeah, so we are hosting a candidate roundtable, candidate forum rather, with the governor candidates. And it's I believe it's the first publicly open forum with all of the major candidates that's been held, which is part of the reason why I think we've had several hundred people sign up to join us. We're also going to be streaming it live, and so if you go to our website, mainstreetalliance.org, sign up, and we'll make sure that you get the link to be able to watch it live if you can't make it in person. But we're going to be talking with them about the issues that folks care about, whether that's, the things, badge care expansion with the public option, paid family medical leave, childcare. I'm sure data centers will probably come up, just given it's such an important issue in the news, and just see what they would do if they were elected our next governor. It's super exciting to have this open primary, and we want to make sure people have an opportunity to engage directly with the candidates.
I had the opportunity to talk to former Lieutenant Governor Mandela Barnes at a farm in Cadott back on Friday, and I asked him about that as well. And he said he was very much looking forward to, now that everybody has launched their campaigns, getting everybody in a room and talking about those ideas. And he'll talk about his experiences, of course, as will all of the candidates: Joel Brennan, David Crawley, Francesca Hong, Missy Hughes, Sara Rodriguez, and Kelda Royce will all be there. So are you going to be planning, Shawn, other events like that related to the campaign for governor?
Yes, we are. So I would say, first off, there's going to be a forum up in March. We're solidifying details right now with the local partner, but that will be taking place because we want to make sure folks, not just in Milwaukee, but in Appleton and all across the state, can have that access. I would say the other thing we're going to do is host events with the individual candidates over the course of the year. We're going to be doing a series called Cooking with the candidates. So one thing that's really great about our network in Wisconsin is we have a lot of chefs, people like Chef Dan Jacobs and Chef Evan Daniels, who's the Chef of the Year from Madison. A lot of folks who really know how to cook. And so we're going to be sitting down with the candidates, having them make something that means something to them and tells a little bit about who they are, and having roundtables with local small business owners and farmers across the state in the spring. So super excited. And, we're not, as an organization, we are not going to endorse in the primary, but what we will do is work to inform the candidates, to build that relationship, and to make sure that they're ready, whoever the winner of the primary is, to take on Tom Tiffany if he's the nominee in the fall.
And then I guess I can't let you go without talking about the experiences in Minnesota, because you've been working with, the partner organizations there as well, where there is this, crackdown, to put it mildly. And again, the impact on small businesses, the lack of true immigration reform has taken a toll throughout the country, not just in the ways that we see on TV, but in those areas behind the scenes as well, which I have to believe your Minnesota member colleagues are very concerned about.
Yeah, our Minnesota members, we have folks across the state, but our membership is pretty heavily concentrated in the Twin Cities. And I think folks who've been watching the news stories, whether it's the murder of Renee Good, whether it's the shooting that happened last night, I think are really missing the scope of what's happening at the moment. There are cars that all of a sudden are just like empty and still running in the streets. I mean, it's 3,000 ICE agents are deployed to the Twin Cities right now. That's 6 times as many cops as are there. So it's almost an occupying force of the city. And the kind of abuse and violence and just the kinetic energy that are coming from those folks who are in many cases very poorly trained, not using warrants, not respecting people's civil rights, is absolutely horrendous. And so we put out a statement on this last night, speaking about the impact this is having on the business community. The main thing is people's basic human rights being violated. But what I also say is that there's people who their staff aren't showing up because they don't feel safe. And so they're not able to operate their business. So a lot of places are shutting down as a result. The president did say that he might invoke the Insurrection Act this morning on Truth Social. And I think that what he's trying to do is he's trying to make an example of Minnesota and really use it as a testing ground for what he might do in other parts of the country. And so I think this is the time for people, even if it's hard, even if it's difficult, to protest, to speak out, to use your platform to say this is not okay, pressure Republican lawmakers in Congress to make sure they know this is not acceptable, and ultimately use your voice to be able to help support the folks who are really being hurt right now.
Yeah, I think they've realized that they could not do as much as they wanted in places, like Chicago and elsewhere where they got immense pushback, and somehow thought, that Minnesota nice thing meant that the good people of Minnesota would just roll over, and that's not how it works up here in the Midwest at all. So I'm very happy to see your members are organized in opposition to that. You can learn more at mainstreetalliance.org. Shawn Phetteplace, always great to connect with you. Thanks for helping us understand more about the day of action next week and the first gubernatorial candidate forum. I'm sure we're going to have a lot of ground to cover in the year ahead. Thanks again for being here today.
All right, sounds good. Thank you, Pat. Appreciate you.
Yep, thank you very much. Appreciate all that you're doing as well. I also want to say that Minnesota Governor Tim Walz did a primetime speech last night. And in it, he said something that I was frankly going to post about as well, when he said, now, obviously, everybody needs to remain peaceful. They're looking to provoke trouble. They're looking to provoke violence. But at the same time, we should be out there. And one of the things he made sure to mention was take video, take photographs, because at some point this is going to end, and at some point there will be consequences. These are not your typical law enforcement officers. They are acting in illegal fashions. They are doing things that they hope somehow are pardoned by the president or lead to some kind of immunity. And I'm telling you, that's just not going to exist. And the only way that there will be justice done for these current illegal acts is if there is a video and photographic record of them. So I was glad to hear about that. Also on the website, you recall that on Monday, I talked to Abigail Sweats from Fair, Wisconsin. My article about that is now up on the website. The headline is, "What is Gender-Affirming Care and Why Do Conservatives Want to Destroy It?" Again, you can look for that at upnorthnewswi.com. You can also hit subscribe in the top banner, where you can see a way to subscribe to both newsletters, the weekday one and my Sunday morning one, that includes our question of the week. And I'm going to have some of the latest results, some of the responses you've been sending in about the question of the week, and of course our Do Something calendar of events and today's history lesson, all coming up in just a sec. I'm Pat Kreitlow. You're Up North. All right, let's take a look at the calendar of events, and some you've heard of already, and some are new on here. And again, these are things that I have been able to find online, so I would urge you to send in your own events to our general mailbox at Up North News, info@upnorthnewswi.com. Let's see. Let's start with, a happy hour of all things. Tonight, the Monroe County Democratic Party is starting a new monthly social event. It's a happy hour event that is taking place at the Brick Sip House in Toma every third Thursday of the month at 5:30. And this evening, Rodney Rave, a candidate for the 3rd Congressional District, will be in attendance. Also this evening, Rice Lake Indivisible meets at 5:30, so you can search Rice Lake at indivisible.org for more information. On Saturday afternoon, Dodge County Dems will feature local farmer and Wisconsin Farmers Union member Michael Slattery to talk about the impact that deportations are having on the Wisconsin economy and on farmers. That'll all be at the Dodge County Party office on Spring Street in Beaver Dam starting Saturday at 1 p.m. Also on Saturday, Chippewa Valley Indivisible meets at 4 p.m. at Our Savior's Lutheran on Mansfield Street in Chippewa Falls. Also on Saturday, the Ozaukee County Democrats have their weekly food drive from 11 until 1 on Cheyenne Avenue in Grafton. Monday is the Martin Luther King Jr. holiday, and the League of Women Voters of Milwaukee will have an event titled "Where Do We Go From Here? What's Next?" And you can go to lwvmilwaukee.org for League of Women Voters, lwvmilwaukee.org. Again, next week, there will also be on Tuesday a Free America walkout, the afternoon of Tuesday the 20th, to mark Trump's 1 year in office. And we talked about next Tuesday, the Main Street action at the Capitol that'll be going on. And then next week, Wednesday, January 21st, is that gubernatorial candidate forum. All right, let's take a look at today's history lesson, shall we? And I will put a couple of links in the comment sections about this as well. The nice thing is I can now share links to videos. I couldn't have those on the radio, obviously. And so yesterday, as I was teasing today's program, I put up a link to a song from Pitbull because Armando Perez, a.k.a. Pitbull, turns 45 years old today. In terms of football, yesterday was the 58th anniversary of the Packers playing in Super Bowl II. Today happens to be the 59th anniversary of the Packers winning Super Bowl I, though they weren't calling it Super Bowl at that point. The Packers beat the Kansas City Chiefs on this day in 1967, 35-10. More birthdays. The late Ronnie Van Zant of Leonard Skinner was born this day in 1948. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was born this day in 1929. On this day in 1892, James Naismith published The Rules of Basketball. On this day in 1967, Mick Jagger was on The Ed Sullivan Show, and they did their song Let's Spend the Night Together, except he wasn't allowed to say that. At Ed Sullivan's insistence, Mick Jagger sang Let's Spend Some Time Together, famously rolling his eyes as he was singing the altered lyrics. On this day in 1972, Don McLean's American Pie hit number 1, and it would be the number 1 song for 4 weeks in 1972. And you all get to hear it all in its entirety all at once. But back in the day, if you bought the single, because the song runs 8 minutes and 36 seconds, you had to flip the 45 over in order to hear it. On this day in 2009, the Miracle on the Hudson, U.S. Airways Flight 1549 ditched safely in the Hudson River after the plane collided with birds less than 2 minutes after takeoff. All 155 souls on board survived that crash. Okay, let's thank you again for the results for our question of the week from our Sunday newsletter. It goes like this. How do you unplug from the news of the week? Do you take part in physical activities, more mental activities, reading, games, puzzles? Are you just watching or listening to non-political programs, podcasts, movies, and things? Or are you going to fess up to you don't really unplug and you need to do a better job of it? Here's a couple of responses from Mary Kay. Says, I usually take a daily mile-long walk outdoors, but recently had knee replacement, so I'm missing that. I also do crossword puzzles and word puzzles daily. It's a real mind release. Also, I read at least a book a month and sometimes jigsaw puzzles as well. And also got some responses from people saying, no, they don't unplug nearly to the degree that they should, and appreciate the heads up that they need to do a better job of that. So again, if you want to be first to see our question of the week, then as I head over to my day job, you've got to head over to upnorthnewswi.com and subscribe to the newsletter there. That's the reason we do all this, is to show that we've got a good batch of subscribers who are joining us. And thanks for joining me here on my personal little space and letting us do another beautiful morning up north for you. Dr. Kristen Lyerly tomorrow. Lieutenant Governor Sara Rodriguez will be joining me on Monday. Thanks again for being here. Have a great rest of your Thursday.